Hello everyone, Mark here. Welcome back to my garage. So, don't know if some of you noticed, but in one of my previous videos when I was working on the mill, it had a lot of chatter. Well, one of the reasons was because I was using way too much overhang for the overarm support. What I did is I put the part back in afterwards off camera with the overarm support much closer to the body and the cutter of the mill, and that got rid of the chatter and cleaned up the surface beautifully. However, another issue though was that the lead screw was moving, the nut rather was moving along the lead screw, or in this case it's a really weird design. It's a cog, a gear. In fact, it is this gear in particular. Now what happens with this is the lead screw sits in this for its drive. Now that's fine, there's actually no movement in that, so there's no wear in that particular part, which I'm really grateful and happy about, because that makes it nice and means that I don't have to worry about remachining this or somehow changing this for a nut or something. However, what is happening is that the shaft that this rides on, this, although it's got a key in it, it's a very loose fitting key inside that slot, and it uses a set screw just there to then clamp onto here to stop it from slotting from side to side. Now the problem with that is that even though there's a flat and a recess drill just there, it works loose from the vibration of the cutting, and then you get the slop, and it's a problem. So this was designed as a feature that allowed you to rapid travel the table backwards and forwards to do quick cuts, or if you were to push, you could even use it as a surface grinder, sort of, by putting a grinding wheel in the shaft and then rapiding the table backwards and forwards using a lever on the end of this through that hole. Now, I'm never going to use that feature, ever, because I think it's a dumb feature. It adds way too much instability in the machine for doing that, and it was never intended for grinding purposes anyway. It's a mill, not a grinder. So my plan is to disable this. As you can see, I've already taken the lever handle off, is to put this on the shaft, drill through the casting at a clearance hole, drill and tap this gear in line with it, so that then I can basically bolt this on its shaft but completely stop it rotating entirely, and therefore make it nice and solid. So this video should hopefully be my successful endeavours, fingers crossed, of making that modification to the mill. So let me get you set up over there and I'll give you a closer look at what the problem is. Right, so the big issue is, like I was saying, is that this gear here actually fits in this slot here like that, and then the shaft with a key actually comes in from the other side, but it's a bit tight because it's a bit of a stiff fit. But it goes through here, and if you get it in the right place, which I'm not very good at lining up things first time, some of us have that talent, some of us don't, just slots in there like that from the other side, like I said, and then this gear stays there. And then you see the lead screw sits on that, and as it drives against that, pulls the table backwards and forwards along the top here. However, the issue, like I said, is this often the set screw comes loose on this shaft, and then this has a small amount of movement like that. But that amount of movement there translates to an awful lot of movement in the table like that the cutter, as you're advancing it, turning it to pull it back that way, then causes an insane amount of backlash, essentially, even though there's no actual movement slop in the screw. The slop comes from the keyway. Now I could make a better key and things like that, but the problem is this basically is my only mill that has anything like the power needed to make an appropriate key, so I can't use this mill to repair itself because it's not accurate in its current state. So like I said, my plan is just down here. There's still a bit of meat left on the casting. I'm going to drill through there and then stick a bolt through. To be specific, this one, an M10. because that will go through and then just slightly through the gear as well. You'll have to imagine that's through the casting, and that will bolt in there nice and tight. I can even make using the lathe, a spacer there so it doesn't twist the gear, because I don't want it twisting the gear particularly, because it could add binding on the shaft or anything like that. I don't want that. I will make a little washer, a little shim spacer that'll fit over this, but fit that gap there, so that it tightens to that, but without pulling the gear. And then that should prevent it from having any rotational force in that orientation. Plus it also means that I'm not permanently doing anything, so if I did ever want to sell this machine or return that feature for some weird reason, I could just undo the bolt and it would work just as originally intended. Simple as that. It acts kind of like a lock, almost, like a lock pin, except a lot more secure and with little play in it. So, let me break out the drill, work out where I'm going to centre punch here and drill it, and I'll get you in hopefully for a nice angle for drilling. Right, hopefully you can see that. Got my centre punch, got a hammer. Now, I want to make sure that I've got enough room for the bolt head in this casting area here. So, I hold that there at the most it's ever going to rotate for screwing in, and just scribe the paint. It'll show me the bottom of the bolt head. It shows me the bottom of there. Now if I take my calipers and I measure the size of this head, which is 12.5, if I halve that, it'll give me the distance to go up from there to bolt it. So half of 12.5 is 6.25. So if I get me my scribe and come in and I measure 6.25 millimeters, which is roughly that there, lock that down, and then I discover that my calipers are too long. Isn't that lovely? But in theory, as close as I can get it, which is there. So that gives me a point now on how far up I can go with my centre punch, and therefore the drill. Now, what I do want to do is try and get it in line with the centre boss on the gear, so try and get it in line with the centre. So, back out with the calipers. Let's measure the size of this boss, of this hole here. And that is, let's call that 16 mil. Let's call that 16 millimeters. It's fairly close to 16 mil. So half of that would be 8 mil. So to make it as close as possible, just slightly below 8 mil. Should be there. In theory, that should then help if I actually go the right side of the number 1. I know you're all laughing at me in the comments. I'm sure we've all done that mistake. Yep, that seems fairly straightforward to me. So, right there is where I'm going to centre pop it and hopefully be drilling it in the right place. Right, centre punch time. Let's come in to whereabouts I want it, which is there-ish. That's close enough. And my centre punch is a piece of cheap Chinese crap, and it's no longer got a point on it. Yay! That didn't even mark the casting. So, let me find a different punch. Decide I'm going to use one of my transfer punches because it's at least roughly halfway decent. That's more like it. There's a nice little dimple in the centre of that now. I know you guys can't see it, but just in the centre of there is a nice little dimple now. Should be enough to stop the drill wandering. Hopefully, anyway. Right, I'm going to drill this with a 4.5mm. I would have loved to do it with a 5mm, but my 5mm happens to be buggered from something I was trying to do earlier. Really didn't work. Let's get me on the centre point, which is there. Now, because it's cast iron, I don't need any lubrication oil. And there we go. Broke through nicely. Looks nice and level. That's always a bonus. It's always a bonus, that. Right, let's step it up a size now. A size or two anyway. Right, let's go with a 6mm now. Beautiful. That's lovely. Oh, these Thunderweb drills cut amazingly. Hashtag not sponsored. Good on you, Milwaukee. You make some good stuff. I'm not complaining, Milwaukee, if you're watching. If you do want to sponsor me, just get in contact. I wouldn't say no. So that was a 6mm. Let's go for an 8mm. Here we go. In theory, this should be the final size. And there we go. Now, in theory, this bolt should just go through that hole, and it does. It goes through and it spins. So, I got my markings in the right place. It's always a nice feeling when a plan comes together. Always a lovely feeling, that. Right, what I'll do now is grab my transfer punch, make sure it actually fits in the hole, which is the 8mm one. And in theory, oh, that's nice. It's a nice, snug fit in the hole. Beautiful sliding fit for my transfer punch. Right, next stage is to put the shaft and the gear back into place. And then I'll put a pop on this thing. So let's slide this slot back together. Clean the shaft off. I've already cleaned the holes out. Grab the gear. Let's give that a wipe down as well. Don't want any bits of cast iron swarf stuck in anywhere. Let's put this lot back together. Mustn't forget the key. Bit of a sloppy fitting key. It's what the mill came with though. Right. Slide this in from the back. And as always, trying to get the key to line up is a bit of a dark art. Let's try that again. There it goes. Now I just need to tap that home. I have a copper tipped hammer so as not to wreck anything. Right, that is it tapped home. Now, believe it or not, that's still a sliding fit. Now I want to rotate this so that I've got the least worn teeth on the gear at where the screw is going to be. So that is not there, not there. Let's keep going. Some worn teeth there still, more worn. Less worn teeth there. Let's see if there are any better spots. There's a good spot there. Let's see if I bring it round to here with the grub screw horizontal here. There's only a small amount of wear, very small here, which is exactly where the lead screw engages, which is exactly what I want. Now what I can do is I can take the Allen screw that goes to this clamping nut down here, that for some reason never works to hold the shaft tightly enough. It always slips, because it's only designed to be a light clamp, so it's a really weird design, this. So let's just tighten that up. There we go. And I will take my transfer punch, just grab my hammer. Now the thing about transfer punches is you don't want to overdo it with them. And there we go. Now that should have made a nice indent on where that needs to go. So let's take that back out and we'll see how we're doing. Nothing's ever straightforward for me, is it? It turns out where that hole is exactly halfway on this boss right here. So it's half there, half there. Now the beauty is, what I can do then, I don't need this boss to be as chonky as it is. I can turn it down. The only problem I'm concerned about now is obviously if I say, so it's an 8mm thread, which is there. It's going to be very close to the bore. What I may do is, I'm going to chuck this up in the lathe, and I will face this off entirely. This location this side, because it still has the boss this side to locate it against the back. And what I can then do instead is put a make my own spacer that'll go on the shaft here. It's probably going to be the best way around this issue. So what I'll do, getting pretty late in the evening, I'm going to go in and have some tea, and I'll come back out later this evening and I'll stick this in the lathe, get it all running nice and true, and then we'll go from there, shall we? Right, changed my mind. I'm not going to take this entire boss off because there's no need. I only need it gone from that side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a mini mill, hopefully it's got enough heft to it, to take the boss down enough so that I can then get a drill in to drill and tap the 8mm bolt. So let's strike her up and touch off and see what happens, shall we? Right, first we're going to touch off. Right, there's the touch. Now we're going to bring it down a little bit. I'm going to move out. Right, let's try taking it down a bit further. Let's have a look at it. This is some very hard material, people. I honestly don't know what this gear's made of, but I don't think this mill's going to have the heft to do it. Let's try a little bit deeper cut and see what happens. The cutter isn't even touching that. This gear is obviously well hardened, shall we say. I'm at a bit of a loss now, guys, as to what to do. I'm going to have a think about it, and I'll bring you back when I've thought of what I'm going to do to proceed with this. Well, given that I can't mill this bleeding thing, because it's super hard, I've got no choice but to do it with some carbide in the lathe and turn it all off entirely. Didn't want to have to do that, which is really frustrating. I've just got no other choice though. Just giving it a test cut, and this stuff's coming off red hot. I mean, literally glowing red hot. It is super hardened, this material. I just don't know what else I can do though, guys, other than just turn it off. I'll show you just how hard it is on this cup. Only a tiny amount of cut added. This stuff is super hardened. It's already making that gear hot. Just from maybe 2 thou passes? And the gear's already warming up. I don't think I'm going to be able to do this, guys. I think I'm just going to have to try and drill it somehow to clear the shoulder out. In the drill press. I'm just going to have to try and just drill part of this flange out just using a drill bit. But if it's this hard that even carbide is struggling to cut it, I'm not even sure if I've got anything that will cut this thing. All that I can say is this mill is one clusterfuck after another. What I'll do, I'm not a complete idiot though. Oh, I did that up tight. I will check my insert. It's, yeah, it's still good. I haven't ruined my insert at least. I suppose that's one thing. Let's try and put a chamfer on the end of that, just to get rid of that hard edge. And let's see what happens. Did nothing but burn up the tool. This thing is harder than treated high-speed steel. I am not going to be able to cut this thing in the drill press either, guys. So I am now at a complete loss as to what to do. I don't have any form of heat treating equipment to be able to reduce the hardness of it. I have no idea what to do. Chips are really dark as well. Chips are almost black in their colour. It's ridiculous. I don't know why this gear was hardened to such a degree. And then they happen to just be like, oh, I know, we'll make the rest of the system really sloppy. I think the only option I've got now, guys, is to try and use the original mounting system, but just improve it. So let me just take this out of here. I can get the key in. There we go. So maybe make use of still of the original thing using the grub screw, but then I suppose I can maybe drill the shaft instead, so that this goes down deeper into it. But that is, I mean, don't get me wrong, that carbide made a beautiful finish on there. I'm quite proud of how that finishes. However, it's a beautiful smooth finish as well. However, if I can't cut it with a carbide insert on the lathe, there's no way I'll be able to drill through this gear. Not a hope in hell. So, time to think of plan B. So the only option I think I've got is where this set screw bites into it, is to drill that and then tap it the same as the grub screw. Hopefully I've got the tap the right size. I mean, it's Imperial, so I've no idea. I'll have to go through my box of taps, see if I can find the right one. But then I suppose if I tap this the same, then at least the thread will engage into both of them. And then I suppose it'll work, maybe. I have no idea. Right now I'm beginning to just grasp at straws. But I'm not happy about how this is going. I'm not happy at that. Let's see if I can find a tap that matches this surge grub screw, shall we? Right. Well, I've looked out. It happens to be the most standard Imperial thread you'll ever find. 1/4 20. So, that's useful because I have taps and dies for that, not to mention a load of cap head bolts for that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace the grub screw that was in it with just a 1/4 20 cap head, because I can get plenty of purchase on that to tighten it down. And then on the shaft, instead of trying to drill and tap it, what I am going to do first of all is just try making this as nice and flat a big recess for it to really lock onto as possible, and then give it another whirl, see what happens. Let's hope it works. So just give me a sec to clear the vise out so I can get this clamped up, and I'll give it some licks with a file. Right, let's get it clamped up in the vise. This whole clamping mechanism isn't going to be pretty because I can't clamp it on a long piece of the shaft. Let's find a fairly good file. Yeah, that's not a bad one, that. Let's see what we can do. Right, at least I can bleed and cut this. So, that's definitely got a nice flat in it now. Suppose all that's left to do now is to actually try this, see if it works. Let me grab the gear, the Allen key, and the actual shaft key as well. Let's see if we can figure this out. Right. In goes the key. Now it has got a slight wedge shape to it. So in goes the key. And then we slide the gear on. Ooh. Definitely got a tight fit to it. Wow, definitely a tight fit. Okay, that's got that in there. And we take our Allen key and we can get that locked down on the shaft nice and tight like that. And now in theory that should never wiggle and never go anywhere, so hopefully that will work. Only one thing left to do is actually put it in the mill and try it. Let's see what happens, shall we? Right, let's see if we can get this to work, shall we? Let's see what we can do here. Make sure the bores are nice and clear. Yep, they are. Let's bring this in. Hopefully you can see that. Okay, let's bring that in. Right, now let me orientate this in the correct direction so that I don't send the key flying. Let's try and line this bad boy up. There it is, like that. Now we can just give it a bit of a tap. And we can just tap this into place. There it is. Then we can rotate that round so that gear is horizontal again. And now let's grab my Allen key and give this a go at being tightened up finally. Right, there we go, that's got that there, and then can give it a proper torque. There it is. Right, now that is now locked tight to that, so that movement there is the actual shaft spinning because the clamp's still loose. So then the last thing to do is to tighten up the clamp on the shaft. Right, I can even get the Allen key in the hole. It's quite fortunate really that basically every single bolt on this is a 1/4 Then we can lock that down and rest on that, get that nice and tight, and now that, oh look at that, there's no movement in that at all. Oh, beautiful. That's what I like to see. That's what I like to see. Oh, that makes me happy, that. Right happy. Right, let's put the table back on. Let me oil it up first. Let's get some oil on the table. I like to make sure to oil the underside of the table, purely because it is all machined. I don't want it flash rusting or going rusty underneath in any way. As you guys can probably see on the screen there, I've reinstalled the gib now, oiled that up as well, so that's ready to rock and roll. But now, time to put the big table back on. Big table, all the table, gotta love the table. Right, because it's a hefty lump, this thing. And for some reason it only really slides on from this side. Oh. Don't know why that is, it just does. And it's a bit of a bitch to get started. Let's see if I can get this thing started. Gosh, she's a bugger. She's a little bugger, this thing. Let me grab my Allen key to loosen off those gib screws even more. I'm not happy with how that's going. Oh no, that one's too tight, it won't loosen. See, I can get this loosened enough to get this to slide. There she goes. There she goes. Cool, that's a mission, that is, getting that thing in there. Now comes the wonderful job of then setting up the actual tightness, but not before we reinstall the lead screw. Let's see how this thing goes. Now it's a little bit weird, this, you have to actually like screw it in because of the way it's designed. It's a bit weird. Bit of a weird design, this. Then it goes into the hole at the end, like so. Let me move you over here a bit, guys, so you can see better what I'm doing. Let's get you in there, so you can see me putting the bits back in. Again, once again, 1/4-20. I have no idea what the obsession is with 1/4-20 on this machine, but everything on it is. Every single type of socket on it that's, you know, reasonable size, you know, this sort of size, is 1/4-20. Let's move that back a bit so that I'm not clouting the screw. I say screw, I mean the gear. That bloody gear that we can't do out with. I tell you, this machine is cursed. Right, I've got it in. Let's see. Oh, it's nice and responsive. There's not much backlash. Well, that's nice. That's solved a lot of problems. Still nice and smooth. Oh, that's nice. Still got to tighten the Gibbs screws up, but that's wonderful, that. The phrase world of and difference spring to mind immediately. That's pretty impressive. Right, now for the fun bit. Adjusting the Gibbs to get those running nice again. I don't know how you lot feel. Personally, the Gibbs is the worst job of the whole lot. Of any machine, adjusting the Gib is always a nightmare. I don't care what anyone says. It's a terrible, terrible, terrible thing to have to do on a machine. Because you have to make sure you get your lock nuts right, you know. Then of course, inevitably, while you're doing it, you tighten them up, it moves the grub screw again. So ridiculous. So what I like to do with these is just move them off and then bring them in till you can't tighten them anymore. This tends to, in my opinion, just using 2 fingers, in my opinion, this tends to get the best results. There we go. Right, let's check that out and see how that works. We're looking for any movement, any rock, And there is a tiny bit perceivable, so you can tighten that up by hand. Just a little bit, just to make sure. And then you make sure that the table still moves. And you keep repeating this process of trying to rock the table and seeing if there's any movement in it, all while moving it in different positions along its length. So let's try it there now. Yeah, you see now I have some rock on this one here. So now I can just tighten that up slightly. Check the others. That's removed that. The table still slides nicely. Let's bring it to there. Again, there's the smallest amount of movement here. Now this is showing that there's definitely some wear in the gib strip. But now, once again, now that that's tightened, that's fine. Let's move it out further. Let's take it to its extent, which is there. And there's no rock in that at all. So now what we do is you bring the table back. We check it here. And there's no movement there. And we can bring it back again. Now remember, we tightened this one here quite considerably, so it may get stiff as you get towards the other end of travel. Now as I come back to here, I don't want to go any further than that, otherwise I'll physically jam the table. And there's no movement, and I was able to move it there with little effort. So that tells me that that now is the gibs in the correct position. So what I then do is you take your Allen key in the slot, bring your nuts up, and then just snug them. You don't need to apply a lot of force here, because if you over torque these, you can shear it off. And then trying to extract a hardened screw out of cast iron, good luck with that. It will take you a long time. You'll need plenty of cutting fluid to do that. Now, that's the problem with this one. This one's a bit finicky. This one has got a bit of mangled thread from a previous person. I keep meaning to try and fix that. But it's one of those good old round to-it jobs. I'm sure you all have those jobs. And we can just snug that one back up as well, like that. Let's bring that. Let's check for movement in the screw. That's fine. And let's check for play. And now this one you see here is loose. So we just tighten that up as well. Let's bring that lock nut back in. And just like that, she's all back together. Gib's adjusted nicely. She works beautifully. Just like that. As you can see, actual movement of the handle does result in table travel as opposed to a load of backlash in this weird ass screw. It's beautiful, but now I've actually replaced the grub screw with a longer one with an actual decent sized cap head on it. I can actually tighten it properly, nice and solid, so I know it's not going anywhere. Beautiful. Now the only movement I've got is a little bit of play in the washer at the end, but that is absolutely fine. That I am happy with. Well, at least that's got partially fixed now. So, that's that. For now, anyway. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video. It was a bit of a mismatch, I know, and a bit of a hodgepodge of a job at the end of the day, but if it works, it works. As always, thank you very much for watching. Stay safe. Catch you next time.